So I just wanted to make a quick video just talking about the two types of imagery, the two types of ways to use imagery, and then kind of just the differences between positive and negative imagery. Because I learned this through reading a sports psychology book, but also I applied it through like my real life experience. So when I'm practicing outside. So I just wanted to talk about that, just share my experience and maybe help you kind of use visualization or imagery or simulation, whatever you call it. So what I found out was that there's actually two types of imagery. So there's cognitive imagery and then there's motivational imagery. So cognitive imagery just refers to just like our perception and this decision-making skills. So just differentiating things in our minds, just kind of like, okay, that's a player on my team, that's a player on the opponent's team. That's kind of cognitive. And then there's motivational, which is just basically seeing yourself succeed. You know, you're winning a gold medal, or you're making a 3-point shot, or you're doing something successfully. That's essentially what the motivational aspect of it is. And I try to use both types of imagery using the two different ways of imagery. And the two different ways of imagining is like from it's called internal and external imagery. So internal is basically like a first person view. So just how you see life just through your own eyes. That's internal imagery. You know, it's like you're seeing it just how it is, how you would do it. And internal imagery is actually the most beneficial if you want to do more cognitive type of imagery. So that's kind of like practicing your form. That's the main benefit. That's what you use internal imagery for, to enhance that aspect of your performance. So, you know, if I want to practice my free throw form, you know, I'd imagine it, and I can actually just practice it in real life, or I can just sit still and just imagine it happen, or I can actually be in practice. This is another thing. Imagery can be used during practice, before practice, and after practice. And it's most beneficial during practice, and also you can use it in competition. It's actually most beneficial after competition, which is, I'll talk more about it later, but it's basically because the images of the event is still fresh in our mind, so we can use the vividness of the images to kind of visualize better and enhance our performance. But going back to what I was saying, you know, I can imagine practicing my free throw form, either in practice, you know, just during a competition when I'm making a free throw, or I can sit still, or like lay in bed and just imagine it with my eyes closed. And I imagine every different step. I imagine like how my muscles are kind of tensing up or loosening, how I'm moving, you know, that type of thing. That's most beneficial with internal imagery. With external imagery, I found it was most beneficial with motivational imagery, because you can't actually do external imagery in practice. Like, you can't practice your free throw form from a third person view. That's external imagery, by the way. If like a third person view, let's say you're imagining yourself from a camera angle or like from the bench, that's what is external. And it's basically impossible to imagine yourself from a third person view while you're actually practicing something. So we basically just don't do that. But what I found that you can increase your confidence and just your belief in yourself just through imagining yourself accomplishing something from a third person view. Now, you can do this from a first person view as well, but I find it's more beneficial doing it from a third person view. That's why external imagery is useful. So you can imagine yourself being a defender, or, you know, doing something really well, or winning a competition, or your team winning, you know, you making a good play, that type of stuff. So that's kind of like internal and external imagery and how it relates to motivational and cognitive imagery. I also wanted to talk about positive imagery and negative imagery. So obviously you want to have positive imagery, but in a sense, the negative imagery that I'm talking about is like, let's say I'm going to use free throws as an example again, but let's say I'm imagining myself shooting a free throw. And using self-talk, I can imagine myself making the free throw. I can tell myself, you will make the free throw, you will do it well, something like that. And that's a positive type of imagery and self-talk. So I imagine myself making the shot. I tell myself I'm going to make the shot, and then when I go for it, I make the shot. Negative imagery in this context basically means like, don't miss, don't fuck it up, okay? Don't, aim to the right or to the left. Like, just, you're basically saying, don't do this wrong, don't screw up. That's kind of negative imagery. You might think that it's actually good, but it's actually worse off doing that. You're much better off imagining yourself doing something well and telling yourself that you're going to do something well, instead of saying don't do something wrong, if that makes sense. So just imagine yourself succeeding instead of telling yourself not to succeed, and imagine yourself not succeeding and telling yourself not to succeed. Like, but yeah, that's kind of what I found. I found that I visualize quite well, both like when I'm in bed, from an external view, and also like during practice from an internal view. I imagine myself like there's defenders around me, and I'm kind of just, practicing my form, my mid-range, my 3-point. I kind of imagine myself like making it, and I tell myself, yeah, I got the form right, you'll get it in. And then most of the time, like, I'm actually get it in, so it does help. I don't practice negative imagery, so I can't compare, because I just know it's not good. That's what I got from the books anyways. But yeah, that's probably some important information. Just, it's better to imagine yourself doing something well and telling yourself that you're doing something well, or you're going to do something well, instead of saying and imagining that you're going to do something wrong and tell yourself that you're not, to not do something wrong. But yeah, that's kind of my rambling. That's over. I'll update with more imagery stuff that I find out. But yeah, make sure to subscribe so you get more notified about my future videos. And yeah, peace.